Hello everyone, this is Doug Jankowski with the Grizzled Geek, and coming to you with another episode of Star Wars: The Old Republic. Today we're going to look at the Conquest system, and specifically we're going to talk some tips and tricks for earning your points based on the type of conquest that will be going on at this specific time. Basically, there are three different categories of conquest missions, or conquest, we'll call them conquest missions, or weekly conquests. They are those that include heroics in the point values, and those are Clash in Hyperspace, Deathmark, Emergency Operations, Rakghoul Resurgence on Alderaan and Corellia, and Balance of Power. For some reason, the Rakghoul Resurgence on Tatooine, as we're going through right now, does not include a heroic as something you can earn points for. So then that falls into the second category we're going to talk about, which are those that do not have heroics. They are Flashpoint Havoc, Relics of the Gree, Revenge of the Revenites, the Dread War, and Rakghoul Resurgence on Tatooine. The final category that we'll touch on at the end is the crafting conquests, and those include the Trade Emporium, Titans of Industry, and Total Galactic War. So let's look at each of the categories individually and talk about some of the tips and tricks that will help you make your point values, which will generally be about 20,000 as we see here. The number one tip for all of these is to get your strongholds decorated. If you own 5 strongholds and they are all 100% decorated, you can get a 125% bonus on your points. So here we have a scoreboard that does not include any guild invasion bonuses. I haven't invaded a planet yet with this guild, so these are the base point values. So if you look at, for example, crafting an invasion force at 125% bonus, this is going to get 4,500 points. Now, if there were a planet invasion bonus here, it would say down here, like it does here, for example, and then you'd get another, in the case of a ×2, another 100% added on. So that stacks up pretty nicely as you go along. The second, tip is to match your activities to what the bonuses are. So, for example, here we can look and see what the bonuses are. Now, I control the invasion of this planet for my guild, so I can go, well, you know what, I like the bonuses that Tatooine gives over the other ones, so I'm going to invade Tatooine. So I'm going to go ahead and set that up. And you'll see the points change for almost everything on the list for Tatooine. So that's a good measure. So go and see where your guild is invading, or if you are one of the officers who controls the invasion, carefully check over what those invasion bonuses are going to give you and what you're more likely to do, and then go you make that decision based on that. And then obviously you're going to make a decision based on your play style. If you don't like doing war zones, even if they give a good amount of points, you're probably not going to do them. But you do want to check and see what's going to give you a good amount of points. One thing to keep in mind is on these conquests that do not include the heroic bonuses, you are probably not going to be able to make your points without doing some war zones. There are a few other, and that's that's qualified if you are playing more than one character trying to get conquest points. So some of these one-time bonuses, so if you see the X instead of the infinity sign, that can only be done once. So if you have multiple people, or multiple characters you're trying to get the points for, you're probably going to have to do the war zones on these non-heroic conquests. A good point value is flashpoints, Operations, if you're in a guild that does lots of operations and you like operations, you'll actually probably be able to get your points relatively easy. No war zones, no starfighters, nothing else required. You just have to do these. Their base points would have been 2,000. If you had your 125% bonus, you're up to 4,000. If you're invading a planet that gives a bonus to that, you're up to 6,000. You only have to do 4 of those. You'll surpass your 20,000 goal there. So, just check to see what is going to give points, and then match that up with what you like to do. Now, some of these things, like flashpoints, like operations, you have to be eligible for the daily reward to get points for them, meaning you can only do these once a day to get points. So keep that in mind when making your calculations. You'll also notice that completing the weekly bonuses for in this case, uprisings and the galactic conflicts or the tactical flashpoints will also get you points. So if you do 5 of these, then you'll get the tactical bonus here, giving you 2 times 5 is 10,000, 12,000. If you got the bonus, that'll get you some more. So you can get close with just flashpoints or something like that. But you're probably going to have to do some larger multi-person content to get that. So moving away from the non-heroic conquest planets or conquest operation missions, we'll move on to those that do have heroic missions as one of the things that you'll get. They would appear here at the end. Usually they give 500 points base per heroic, and then depending, you may have a invasion bonus, and then you can factor in your stronghold bonus. So you may get anywhere from 500 to 1,500, or slightly beyond, maybe 1,800 if you've got the full 125 bonus, or something close to 1,800 each. And the nice thing is that those planets that include the heroic conquest, if you use the galactic command system to queue up for that given heroic, planetary heroics, if you queue up through the planetary missions in the galactic commands, you'll be able to do those every day. So if you do something like a planet that has the Voss heroics, which you can do, there's only 4 of them, but if you use the galactic command system, you can do those 4 every day. So within 3 days, you would be able to earn your 20,000 points. So if that's more your speed, you're more interested in doing individual solo stuff that you can do on your own time, you don't have to wait for a group to pop, that's an easy way to get your points on those specific heroic based conquests. Now luckily, those are some of the conquests that come up most frequently. Deathmark, I believe, is the most frequently scheduled conquest. So that gives you the Nar Shaddaa heroics to work with, and you can get through those quite quickly. You can get through those points quite quickly. All right. The last thing I want to talk about before moving on to the crafting is using your weeklies wisely. If you are trying to get points for more than one character, you're going to want to pay attention to these items that only give points for one person, or if you're worried about not having heroics available, you're going to want to pay attention to when these things reward. For example, a lot of them have killing opponents on a given planet. So some of your characters you may enjoy playing more. You may be able to get things, get points easier with those different characters depending on whether they have crafting available, whether there's somebody who can get into an operation. Maybe some of your characters are geared and some aren't. So you want to pay attention to this and use these to get points for people who don't get points well otherwise. So you can build up your kill count and then switch to the character that's having trouble getting points, finish off the kill count, and get them that big point bonus. Alternatively, if you pay attention to the Conquest Schedule, which you can find on Dolphy keeps a good Dolphy.net keeps a good Conquest Schedule updated pretty frequently. So you can tell what future conquests are going to be, and if you know you're coming up on one that does not have heroics and it's going to be tough to get points, you can hold off finishing some of your weeklies, specifically the Galactic Conflicts, the Tacticals, and your weekly for Starfighter and War Zones, and hold those off until that new conquest starts, and then with just a couple of, with one or two flashpoints or a couple of war zones or GSF matches, you would be able to get a big point bump through completing those weeklies. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, the last category of conquests we're going to look at are those 3 conquests: Trade Emporium, Titans of Industry, and Total Galactic War, which include crafting. The typical conquest, all of the others but those 3, allow you to only craft one set of war supplies and one invasion force. And as I discussed on my first overview of the basics of Conquest, an invasion force is also a war supply. So if you have somebody craft an invasion force, they are going to get the points for both the invasion force and the war supply. So if you're hoping to split those up, make sure that you have somebody craft the war supply first, then craft the invasion force, so you can spread those points between multiple characters. But that's neither here nor there for this discussion. When it comes to the crafting conquest, these will become infinite symbols, or at least the Trade Emporium and the Titans of Industry allow infinite of both of these. The Total Galactic War does not allow infinite invasion forces. It does on the other war supplies. So that's something to keep in mind. So this makes, if you have crafting characters, this makes getting your points really easily. The Titans of Industry and Total Galactic War, I think Total Galactic War has a 50,000 point total instead of 20,000, and the other two have 25,000 instead of 20,000. So you need to earn a few more points, but not a lot. The ability to craft is going to really make getting your points easy if you take the time to invest ahead of time to get prepared. That means having your characters craft the necessary components depending on what they have. So, for example, Artifice has bonded attachments. I believe the other, as does the other archaeology-based crafting, and you'll have the different things that are the components that are going to be used to craft the various supplies. So in this case, you need 4 of each of these type of supplies. So you build up a reserve of those in the meantime to be able to have enough to craft for your crafters when the actual conquest comes. You'll also want to then save up all of those because they're required to make your invasion forces. As you can see, we just went through Trade Emporium recently, and I've depleted my supply of war supplies, so I'll have to build those back up. So in future crafting, Total Galactic War, or the Titans of Industry, or Trade Emporium, I'll build these up and craft fewer of the invasion forces so that I can get a reserve of these, because you're going to want to build up a large number of these if you want to help your guild get into the top 10, if that's a goal of yours. If not, it does make it pretty easy to get those rewards on those those different conquest areas. So those are some of the basics for it. One other tip I would give if you are interested in conquest is find a guild that also is interested in conquest. A guild that makes that a priority. They will have more people who are interested in group content and accomplishing all of these. They'll often run events geared towards, for example, killing enemy commanders or defenses. The champions you see guarding the opposing factions' deployment areas on whatever planet it happens to be. So those guilds will have events that match those that will help them to place in the top 10 on these various conquests. Like I said in the last video on the basics of conquest, if you finish number 1 in a conquest, you get a title for it. Conqueror of, in this case, Tatooine, or Conqueror of Nar Shaddaa, or whatever that might be. So it's a nice little benefit, a nice little achievement to work towards. So there you go. There's some of the tips and tricks to get your point values and to meet your conquest point goals for these various conquests. If you have any questions, please put those in the comments below. If you have any other tips or tricks that have helped you to reach your conquest objectives, please let us know. If you found this information useful, please hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell to be informed when I post more videos. In the meantime, may the Force be with you, and you have fun playing Star Wars: The Old Republic.